Hello, I'm Janusz Rewiński and you're watching Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you everything you need to know. Imagine waking up, checking your phone, and realizing you've been accidentally added to a top-secret military strategy chat. Sounds like a spy novel. Not for Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, who recently found himself inside a Pentagon group chat on Signal, alongside the US Vice President, the Secretary of Defense, and other high-ranking officials. For days, Goldberg silently observed America's top brass while they argued, debated, and shared military plans in real time. Then, just when things couldn't get more surreal, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth reportedly dropped the full, detailed plans for US airstrikes on Iranian-backed Houthi militants in Yemen, including precise targets, weapons to be used, and attack sequences. Goldberg, stunned by the sheer recklessness of it all, described the experience as shocking, and rightfully so. Either the Pentagon's cyber hygiene is non-existent, or top US officials are now outsourcing war strategy to random journalists. Now, for those involved in the chat, the biggest problem apparently was that securing the route through the Red Sea would be to Europe's advantage. And, well, guess what? When Putin's favorite journalists, we're using the word journalists in the loosest possible sense here, got wind of that, they had a field day with this story. Check this out.
Главный американский скандал. Советник Трампа по нацбезопасности Уолт сознательно или случайно добавил редактора американского журнала «Атлантик» внимание в рабочий чат первых лиц государства. Так мы узнали, что такие чаты в принципе существуют. Здесь же глава ЦРУ Джон Рэдклифф, вот он поздравляет всех причастных с отличным стартом. Ракеты попали. Здесь же совершенно безумные эмодзи. Ударный кулак, звездно-полосатый баннер и огонек. Вице-президент США Джей Ди Венс назвал воздушную операцию прекрасной. Написал, что спасать Европу, а в этом случае речь о судоходстве в Красном море, он ненавидит.
The real mystery is this. How did this even happen? Who was responsible for adding an investigative journalist to a confidential military chat? How many other unauthorized participants were lurking in the Pentagon's digital war room? One thing is certain, if America's most sensitive war plans are being leaked through a glorified WhatsApp group, perhaps the biggest threat to US national security isn't an external enemy, it's the Pentagon's IT department. By the way, if I ever get added to any sort of random military chat on Signal, Discord, and there will be something interesting happening there, of course, be sure that I will be there to tell you everything. Alright, let's move on to a little something you might have seen and thought, wow, this has to be fake for sure. However, based on numerous reports, this thing is real. Enjoy. Rather ironic to have Pikachu popping up in Turkey, while the local law enforcement literally plays gotta catch 'em all with the anti-Erdogan protesters. But if you thought that was absurd, then let's do a who's that Pokemon kind of thing. I'll give you a quote and you'll try to guess. Alright, you guys ready? Here is the quote. A temporary administration could be introduced in Ukraine under the auspices of the United Nations, the United States, European countries, and our partners. End of quote. Any guesses as to who got out of the Pokeball to spread this nonsense? No, it's not the Uncle Ben meme. Okay, time's up.
В общем, такая практика есть. И в принципе, конечно, можно было бы под эгидой ООН, с Соединенными Штатами, даже с европейскими странами, разумеется, с нашими партнерами и друзьями, обсудить возможности введения на Украине временного управления. А для чего? Для того, чтобы провести демократические выборы, для того, чтобы привести к власти дееспособное и пользующееся доверием народа правительство, и потом же с ними начинать мирный договор, начинать переговоры о мирном договоре, подписывать легитимные документы, которые будут признаны во всем мире. И...
There you go. I know you guys thought it was Diglett. Kinda makes sense though. Diglett's bald as well, plus it spends much of its time underground and has very thin skin. That's the official description, by the way. Now, Putin really likes to spend time in bunkers, i.e. underground. Also, very thin skin right there. Criticize him, you'll fall out of a window, or your plane will crash. I'd say, ask Yevgeny Prigozhin, but you know. As to the whole idea of interim administration, this is new but not unpredictable. Moscow has long been suggesting that Ukraine is ruled by Nazis, which is false, and that Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is illegitimate because he is illegally preventing elections, which again is completely false. Their long-standing goal, as stated by the Institute for the Study of War in a report dated March the 3rd this year, is to, and I quote, decapitate the Ukrainian government. Now, initially, Moscow attempted the decapitation strategy quite literally, trying to pull some Assassin's Creed maneuvers on Zelensky a few times. Since the murder plot has failed, the Kremlin shifted towards trying to undermine his legitimacy instead. They even seemed to find some sympathetic voices in Washington in 2025, with members of the Trump team insisting on elections in Ukraine despite its constitution clearly saying no elections during wartime, full stop. Remember the whole dictator with no elections thing? Yeah. Putin's latest shtick with UN interim governance is yet another part in the same long-standing game that he's playing. In a dazzling display of Russian justice, an institution as independent as a trained circus bear, Moscow has once again proven its commitment to the rule of law. This time, it did so by sentencing 12 Ukrainian prisoners of war from the Azov regiment to prison terms ranging from 13 to 23 years. Naturally, this verdict, handed down on the 26th of March in Rostov-on-Don, just so happened to coincide with yet another round of so-called peace negotiations in Saudi Arabia. A neat little reminder from the Kremlin that peace is a flexible concept, much like election results in Russia itself. The charges, of course, were nothing short of poetic. The soldiers' actual crime? Defending their own country. But in the great halls of Russian jurisprudence, where confessions are extracted with the finesse of a sledgehammer, reality is merely an inconvenience. It is remarkable how efficiently Russia can prosecute Ukrainian prisoners of war, while at the same time failing to locate a single war criminal within its own ranks, a mystery for the ages. Some of the Azov fighters were lucky, if you can call it like that. They were sentenced in absentia, having been swapped in earlier prisoner exchanges. It's a grim lottery, escape by trade or become a trophy in Putin's collection of show trials. Those left behind, however, will now get a front-row seat to Russia's penitentiary hospitality, an experience previously enjoyed by opposition figures, dissidents, and anyone who dares to walk within 5 kilometers of a protest sign. Meanwhile, Russian propagandists will no doubt hail this as a triumph of justice, broadcasting to their audience of babushkas and security officers that the Azov regiment, rebranded by the Kremlin's fevered imagination as the new version of the German Wehrmacht, has been dealt with. What's another breach of Geneva Conventions when your entire foreign policy is based on historical past play and selective amnesia? But let's not dwell on trivialities like international law or human rights. In Moscow's vision for the future, these trials will keep coming. More enemies of the state will be paraded before kangaroo courts, their sentences predetermined by the same people who write Putin's annual victory speeches. And the world will continue to watch, occasionally gasping in outrage, but ultimately doing very little to stop this. Because if there is one thing the Kremlin has learned, it's that as long as you call it justice with a straight face, there will always be someone willing to pretend that they actually believe you. And with this, we conclude this episode of Break the Fake. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.